Chapter 1. The stars that sang his name, the circle of forgotten flame, the eyes beneath, the stone, the wind that whispered Revan. There was a time, long before maps were carved into star charts, when the stars still remembered the names of those who passed among them. And in that distant age, one name moved like a whisper through their light, a name sung not in speech, but in resonance. Revan, his name rang like a bell through the fabric of the Force, echoing in chambers where no voice had entered for lifetimes. The stars did not fear him, nor did they follow him. They simply remembered, at the edge of known time, past the veils of what is called history. There stood a great circle of firestones, forgotten now, swallowed by the red sands of a dead moon. Once, this place had been known to the seers of early worlds as the circle of forgotten flame. They came not to worship, but to listen. In the stillness between light and dark, they heard songs drift down from the sky, not in melody, but in feeling. And one night, the flame in the center pulsed without kindling. The stones vibrated softly, the wind bent inward, and those gathered felt the presence of a mind they did not yet know. The stars were singing his name, far beneath this sacred place, in the caverns where no light could reach. There lay the eyes beneath the stone, ancient mirrors of obsidian water, cold and utterly still. These pools were older than breath, older than language, and they showed not what was, but what trembled on the edge of becoming. Those who dared look into them saw futures unchosen, identities not yet worn. When Revan came, he did not kneel. He stood above the pool, silent, his mask still untouched by time. The water did not ripple. It simply opened, and what it showed was not one path, but two. Not light, not dark. A shadow split like a branch, dividing toward nowhere. No record remains of what he felt in that moment, but the wind outside began to howl as if called from beyond the edges of the world. The seers above dropped their stones, and one wept without knowing why. It was the kind of grief one feels when watching a star collapse, a beauty so complete it can only end in silence. That night the wind carried something strange. It moved through forests no longer alive, over ruins that no longer stood, and where it passed old bones stirred, and trees whispered names long buried. The wind had found his spirit, and now it would carry it across the stars. He was not a warlord. Not yet. He was not a Jedi, not truly. He was something still forming, still uncertain, a soul caught between memory and will. But the Force had already begun to bend toward him, curious and careful, like a great river testing a new stone. In distant temples, lights flickered for no reason. Old holocrons trembled in their vaults, and in the dreams of the wise, a figure began to appear, faceless but familiar. They could not speak to him. They could only feel the pull, like gravity, drawing all things toward a storm yet unborn. The circle burned for 7 nights after he left, though no fire was seen. Only warmth remained, and a low sound, like breath. Some said it was the memory of his presence. Others believed the stars were still singing. But after the 7th night, the flames died all at once, and the stones fell silent. The seers scattered. The caves below sealed themselves, and the pools of obsidian water grew still once more. Yet even now, in moments between sleep and waking, some claim to hear it, a soft hum in the darkness, neither voice nor echo, carrying only one word, not a command, not a plea, just a name spoken like a question the stars have not yet answered, and so the circle remains buried. The caverns are sealed. The wind has long moved on, but the force remembers. It does not forget those who shaped its silence. It only waits for another soul to hear the song. Chapter 2. When the moon drank blood, the temple of broken masks, the last chant of Keldroma, the night Revan vanished there, is a world where the moon once wept blood into the sea, not in violence, but in sorrow. It was not true blood, not as we understand it. It was light turned red by a forgotten wound in the sky, cast down upon the ocean like a veil of mourning. On that night, the waves stood still, the trees refused to move, and in the high cliffs above the silver waters, a temple waited as it had for ages. It was called the Temple of Broken Masks. No one knew who built it. No one remembered why, but the stone steps were worn smooth by bare feet, and its walls were carved with faces that had long forgotten their names. Inside, there were no idols, no flames, no chants, only silence and the masks. Some lay shattered on the floor, others hung from old threads, gently swaying with no wind. They were the faces of those who had tried to become more than themselves, and failed. Each mask had been worn by someone who walked the line between devotion and ambition, between self and surrender. Each one had known the Force, not as comfort, but as a question, and among them there was one mask left untouched. It was not made of stone or metal, but of something older, bone and ash, wrapped in cloth, darkened by time. It was said to belong to Keldroma himself, whose voice was last heard in that chamber long after his death. They say he did not speak, but chanted slowly and without breath, a memory that no longer had words. Some who entered the temple could still hear it, soft and low, rising like mist from the cracks in the stone. A lament not for what was lost, but for what would come again. It was here, beneath the eye of that blood-red moon, that Revan was last seen before the war. He did not speak, he did not kneel. He merely stood in the shadow of the old altar, head bowed, cloak still, and then vanished as if swallowed by the very silence he had brought with him. There were no witnesses, only whispers that the temple had accepted him, or perhaps rejected him. That he had gone not forward, but inward, passing through a door no one else could see. Some say he was drawn there by the moonlight, others say by the echo of Keldroma's chant. But those who have walked that path since, who dared climb the steps when the moon turned crimson once more, found only the broken masks, and one mask missing. The Force does not always show us where a path begins. Sometimes it offers only an ending, and asks if we remember why it matters. And on that silent shore, where the sea once reflected blood, there is no war, no peace, no truth. Only the absence of a figure who would reshape everything, and the breathless question that still waits in the temple's dark heart. Was he called by destiny, or did he call it to him? No answer has come. Only the red tide, returning every cycle. Only the broken masks, too many to count. And in the moon's reflection, for just a moment, a flicker of a face without eyes, fading beneath the waves. Chapter 3. The mirror that showed two shadows. The spiral of the black holocron, his voice upon the glass, the memory that walks deep within. A forgotten star cluster where time folds softly and the stars drift like ash. There spins a small world of ice and silence. No name survives for it now, only the memory of what once lay beneath its frozen skin. A sanctuary of obsidian halls, carved in spirals too vast to measure. It was not a temple, Not truly. It was a vault, a prison, a place where the Force once whispered too loudly and was sealed away in silence. At its heart waited a single relic, resting in a cradle of black stone, a holocron unlike any that remain. It pulsed not with light, but with shadow. Its surface shimmered like dark water, and no voice came from within, not at first. It was known, even then, as the spiral of the black holocron, ancient beyond memory, older even than the Sith species. It was said to be born from a wound in the Force, a memory captured at the moment a soul was split in two. Revan came to it alone. No army followed, no map guided him. It was as though the holocron had called to him through the folds of space, through silence and snow and sleep. He entered the spiral chambers, step by step, deeper into the hush, and when he reached the center, the holocron opened not with flame or sound, but with his own voice, not as he was, but as he might become. The mirror surface shimmered. His reflection looked back, and beside it, another shadow, a second figure, a second self. They did not speak, but watched, waiting. It was said that to gaze into the black holocron was to see your divergence, the place where your will splits from the will of the Force. And Revan saw it clearly. Two paths, two lives, both true, both irreversible. His fingers touched the glass, and the surface breathed. The room trembled, not from power, but from memory. It was not a vision of the future he saw, but a future that remembered him. A loop of choices he had not yet made, already echoing back, in one path, a savior, in the other, a conqueror. In both, the same mask. They say he did not leave through the same door he entered, that the spiral shifted behind him, sealing paths with each step, that as he walked, the holocron continued to whisper, his voice echoing a truth he had not yet spoken, and in that whisper was the sorrow of knowing that once you see yourself divided, you cannot become whole again. The spiral was sealed once more. Ice crept across the doors. The halls returned to sleep. But those who speak of the mirror that showed two shadows say it is still waiting beneath the snow, still glowing with a memory, that walks a piece of Revan that never left, that cannot leave because it does not yet know which of the two shadows it truly is, and so it watches, quietly, patiently, not for the one who will claim it, but for the one who will understand its silence. Chapter 4, where the dust still speaks his name, the citadel in the sand. Voices from the cracked pillars, the oath etched in bone beneath, a golden sky where suns fall slowly and never set. There lies a world of silence and dust. Its name has been swallowed by centuries of wind, and no traveler walks its surface now. The ground is layered in fine ash, not from fire, but from time itself, worn into powder by the breath of forgotten years. But if you listen closely, when the wind moves low across the dunes, you may still hear it. His name, carried softly through the grains, Revan spoken not in voice, but in the shifting of the earth. In the center of that vast wasteland stands a broken shape, half buried, leaning as if it were once alive and tired now. A citadel, carved of dark stone, veined with silver, older than any map. Its towers have fallen inward, but one wall still stands. It is smooth and cold, untouched by decay. No one knows who built it. Some say it rose in a single night. Others claim it was shaped by the Force itself, not as a fortress, but as a memory. Within its ruins are columns cracked by heat and time, each one marked with spiraling words in a language lost to every tongue. Those who have dared to enter Say the voices never stop speaking, not aloud, but inside. A chorus of memories echoing from the stone. Not all are his. Some are ancient wandering souls that found their end here. But among them, one voice stands clear. Not loud, but steady, a vow spoken without hope, a promise made without forgiveness. Revan's oath, etched not in ink, not in blood, but into the very marrow of the place. They say he knelt there once, when the war he had begun had not yet begun at all. He stood in that circle of pillars and pressed his hand to the stone. What he offered freely, not power, not allegiance, but a piece of himself, a fracture of his soul given over to destiny so that it might know where to find him. And the dust answered. It rose around him like breath, like memory. It filled the air, the halls, the cracks in the pillars. And when it settled, he was gone, but not entirely, because the citadel remembers, not with mind, but with presence. The force flows oddly there. It feels thick, as if slowed. Dreams do not behave. Sleep arrives quickly, but does not comfort. And in that sleep, many have claimed to see a man without a face walking the inner chambers. Not searching, not haunting, just remembering. The scholars who came later tried to map the ruins, tried to capture the voices. None stayed long. Their instruments failed. Their recordings turned to static. Their notes blew away before morning. One archaeologist claimed to have found a single fragment of bone in the dust, carved with strange glyphs, almost like teeth. It crumbled when touched, so now the citadel stands alone again. The sands shift around it, preserving its shape and story like a hand holding a breath. There are no signs, no markers, only silence, and the strange stillness of time held in place. The dust continues to speak in ways no ear can catch. And always, always, it speaks his name, not in worship, not in fear, but as one might whisper to a shadow, hoping it still listens. Chapter 5. The silence of the blade that chose no master, the ritual of ashen threads. 7 steps to the forgotten door, the ghosts that bowed to none far beyond the reach of charts and waylines, hidden. In the folds of forgotten space, there is a world that has never known light. It does not turn, it does not breathe, it simply waits. Cloaked in endless night, the planet's surface is a black ocean of stone and ruin, still cracked and cold. No stars reflect there, no wind stirs, and yet, long ago, warriors came, not to conquer, but to listen, to kneel, to offer themselves, to something older than war. They came for the blade. It was not a weapon of metal or fire, nor shaped by hand. It was found deep beneath the planet's skin, buried in silence, wrapped in threads of ash, a single shape, neither hilt nor edge, resting in a chamber carved by time and belief. The ritual of ashen threads was performed to awaken it, though none remembered where the ritual came from. A gathering of the nameless would kneel in circles of salt and whisper the names they had cast off. Then they would place a hand on the cold stone and wait. Some waited days, others hours, most never returned. But the blade did not kill them. It simply ignored them. It chose no master. It answered no call, until Revan. He arrived alone, silent, masked. No name spoken, no ritual performed. He stepped past the circles, past the salt, past the remains of those who had waited before. He walked the 7 steps, smooth, precise, untouched by dust. The forgotten door opened, not with sound, but with memory. And there it was, the blade, hovering just above. The altar, untouched by decay. He did not reach for it. He stood before it in stillness. And the blade did not rise. It did not glow. It did not move. But it trembled, not in fear, not in choice, in recognition. A quiet shiver, like the breath of the Force itself. He had not come to take it. He had come to leave something behind. What it was, no one knows. Perhaps a thought, perhaps a wound, perhaps the part of him that no longer knew what it believed. The blade remained. Revan turned and walked back into the dark. And from that day, no one who touched the stone could feel anything at all. The blade sleeps again. The warriors who came after found nothing, not even the door. Only the ghosts, silent shapes that flicker in the black stone like smudges of smoke. They do not guard. They do not guide. They bow to no one. For they are not remnants of power, but fragments of will, left behind by those who asked for purpose, and were answered with silence. The Force does not always grant power. Sometimes it answers with stillness. Sometimes the blade remains, floating, forever waiting for one who does not need it. And so the chamber sleeps beneath that dead world. The stars do not look its way. The light does not enter. Only memory remains, and the quiet tremble of something that once nearly awoke. Because the blade chose no master, and yet it remembered 1. Chapter 6, beneath the temple of breathing. Light the flame that does not burn, the echo of his trial, the silence that answered the Force. There is a place beneath the surface of the galaxy, hidden not by distance, but by stillness. A temple carved not into stone, but into light itself. No path leads to it. No star maps record its name. It lies beneath a moon of green fire, in the shell of a crater long cooled. The entrance is breathless, a veil of pale radiance that opens only when approached without intent. It does not allow ambition. It does not answer pain. It welcomes only those who come with nothing. The temple of breathing light is said to be alive. Its walls shimmer gently, as if they are made of woven starlight, pulsing with the rhythm of a sleeping heart. The air glows softly, not from flame, but from something gentler. A presence, maybe, or the last sighs of an ancient truth. Those who have stood within say that the light there breathes, not like fire, not like wind, like memory. And at its center, protected by no barrier, lies the flame that does not burn. It floats above the floor, held in place by stillness, and glows with a color no eye can name, not white, not gold, not shadow, just warmth, just presence. It cannot be taken. It cannot be destroyed. It is not meant to teach, or punish, or reveal. It simply is, a spark of the Force before it knew how to divide. Revan came here not for answers, but for silence. After battles had broken across systems like thunder across mountains, after voices on all sides had begun to demand meaning from every motion, he came here, and the temple welcomed him, not with grandeur, not with guidance, but with breath. He stood before the flame for 3 days. He did not speak. He did not sleep. He did not kneel. The echo of his trial was not a battle. It was not a vision. It was the simple truth of being witnessed, of being seen not by eyes, but by the Force itself. It looked into him, and he into it. He brought with him the weight of choices, of lives, of ruin. The Force offered no judgment, only stillness. And in that stillness, Something inside him folded, not broke, not healed. Folded, like cloth placed carefully away. He left the temple lighter, not free, he would never be free again, but quiet. And behind him the flames shimmered once, then dimmed. They say the light of the temple grows fainter with each passing age, that its breath slows, that perhaps it waits to be extinguished, but not by force, by understanding, by surrender, and the silence that answered the force in that chamber still lingers. It waits in the corners of dreams, in the places between stars. It is not empty. It is not lost. It is the silence of a soul that was seen and chose to walk on. Chapter 7. The day he looked into the sea of minds, the tear that became a rift, the starless meditation, her memory in the tides there, is a place where the force gathers like water, not above, not below, but within, a hidden world, once touched by the will of many minds, now forgotten, left to sleep beneath shifting veils of mist. The ancients called it a sea, though no ocean ripples there. Instead, it is a vast, glimmering field of light and thought, where memory moves like tide, and the past returns as dreams. They called it the Sea of Minds, a living current of the force itself, vast and gentle and infinite. Revan came to this place when the war he carried had grown too loud, when the voices of the living, the fallen, and the forgotten had become tangled in his heart. He came not for power, but for quiet, for stillness, for understanding. They say he stood at the edge of the sea, where the water is not wet, and the light is not seen with eyes. He breathed in silence, and the force breathed back. But something within him was not still. It pulsed, not in anger, but in memory. A wound he did not name, a presence he did not speak of. The tear that became a rift opened then, not in the sky, nor in the sea, but in Revan himself, a moment of fracture, not defeat, but division. His thoughts slipped into the current, and the sea drank them like rain. What it gave back was not clarity, but reflection, a mirror of all the minds he had touched, the followers, the enemies, the ones who called him hero, the ones who called him destroyer, and within the tide of faces, one voice returned again, and again, soft but certain, a woman's voice, not angry, not pleading, just there. She had once stood beside him, in silence and shadow. She had once believed in who he could become. Now she was only a memory in the current, rising and falling with the tide. They say he sat for a day that did not end, a meditation with no light, no time, no anchor, the starless meditation. He saw not futures or pasts, but choices unchosen, hopes left behind. And for a moment he wept, not aloud, not outwardly, but within, a single drop of sorrow that touched the sea like flame, and the sea changed. The tides withdrew, the lights dimmed, and for the first time in that timeless place, the minds grew quiet, as if all the force around him bowed its head, not in worship. In mourning her memory remained, not as pain, not as guilt, but as a question that could not be answered. Did she still believe in him, or had she become something else, something distant, a wave he could no longer reach? He left the Sea of Minds unchanged, or so it seemed, but those who followed, long after, found the water darker, slower, less willing to show itself, as if the sea, too, had taken part of him and kept it, a thread of sorrow, a sliver of doubt, and in dreams, in meditation, in the quiet moments, between waking and rest, some say they see it, the shape of a man standing at the water's edge, silent, unmoving, waiting for her voice to return with the tide. Chapter 8. The Planet. With no name and one dreamstone, dreams of the Sleeper King, the tree that bore no fruit, the sleep that fed the stars. There is a planet that does not appear on any star map. It drifts at the edge of everything, not hidden, but forgotten. No moon watches over it. No light calls it home. It spins slowly, as if dreaming, wrapped in clouds, the color of old parchment. And on its surface, carved from a single mountain that rises through the mist, stands a structure unlike any other, not a temple, not a fortress, but something between sleep and memory. Those who have stood at its gates call it the Dreaming Hall. Others say it is only a breath held by the Force. The people who once lived here are long gone. Their bones have turned to moss, their language to wind, but they left behind their one belief that dreams are not visions of the future, but voices of the Force, waiting to be remembered. They worshipped not gods, not power, not even truth, but sleep, a sacred surrender, the art of stillness. At the heart of the Dreaming Hall lies the tomb of the Sleeper King, though no one knows his name. His likeness is carved into the walls, over and over, always with eyes closed, always listening. His body rests beneath a stone canopy, wrapped in robes that have not faded. They say he never ruled, never fought, never spoke. He simply dreamed, and from his dreams the planet bloomed with quiet. Revan came here during the deepest winter of his soul, after he had known victory and tasted the cost, after names were spoken to him in reverence and in fear. He came not to seek answers, but to sleep. He lay beside the Sleeper King, beneath the hanging tree that bore no fruit. Its roots coiled through the stone, feeding on dreams, not soil. Its branches stretched into the mist, heavy with leaves that never moved. Beneath it, Revan closed his eyes. He did not speak. He did not remember. He simply let go. And in that letting go, something stirred. The planet seemed to breathe. The roots hummed. The mist turned slow and golden. The Force, too, listened, not as a master, not as a guide, but as a companion. Revan's presence touched the Dreaming Hall, like a soft ripple across still water, and the dream that followed was not his alone. It was shared, a collective sleep, echoing into the stars. In that dream, the Force became a field of light and memory. Revan walked among forgotten lives, not as conqueror, not as savior, but as witness. He saw what the galaxy tried to forget, the hands that built temples, the eyes that saw through darkness, the voices that whispered to him before he was born. When he awoke, he did not speak. The mist had shifted. The tree had lost one leaf, its first. It drifted down in silence and vanished before touching the floor. He left the Dreaming Hall with slower steps, not because he was weak, but because he had remembered stillness, the sleep that feeds the stars, the surrender that becomes strength. No, one has found the planet again. Perhaps it only appears when the soul is ready to forget itself, or perhaps it only exists in sleep, a place of rest for those who have carried too much. And somewhere in that mist, the Sleeper King still lies dreaming, and beside him a second figure now carved into the stone, eyes closed, cloak still, remembered not by name, but by silence. Chapter 9. The mask that could not forget, the war that returned in dreams, the shrine of 7 voices, the question that echoed forever. There is a story older than the wars, older than the temples, older even than the name Revan. It is a story about a mask not forged for battle, but for memory. A mask without eyes, without breath, without time. It was said to have no maker, and yet it appeared in many places, worn by many hands. But once it touched Revan, it would never belong to another. It became part of him. And when he removed it, the echo remained. On a moon scorched and silent, scorched not by fire but by history, stands a shrine cradled in the bones of an extinct mountain. It is shaped like a spiral folded inward, built from black glass and ancient coral, the shrine of 7 voices. No one knows who built it. Its stairways are too narrow for feet, its halls too wide for walls. It does not welcome, it does not guard, it listens. Here, Revan returned, not as warrior, not as savior, but as one burdened by memory, too heavy to hold. He came holding his mask, not on his face, but in his hands, as if offering it back to the Force. But the mask did not belong to the Force. It belonged to the question. The shrine had no altar, only 7 narrow pillars carved with forgotten symbols. Each one hummed softly, as if murmuring in sleep. When he placed the mask among them, the shrine awakened. The voices rose, 7, all different. Some whispered, some chanted, one only breathed. But they did not speak to Revan. They spoke to the mask, and in that chorus the war returned. Not in fire, not in sound, but in dreams. The dreams of those who had died, soldiers, children, friends, enemies. Their thoughts spilled into the room, like mist rising through the cracks in the stone. They did not accuse him, they did not praise him. They only remembered him, and in doing so, force him to remember himself. They say Revan stood there for hours or days unmoving. The mask hovered as if unsure whether to fall or to rise, and within it a question echoed again and again, not in words, but in meaning. Were you ever truly one being, or always two? The shrine did not answer. The voices faded. The light dimmed. The mask lowered itself back into his hands, not glowing, not resisting, just there, as if it too could not forget. Revan left the shrine in silence. Some say he left the mask behind. Others say it followed him, no longer resting on his face, but within him, not as armor, not as disguise, but as memory too deep to bury, and the shrine remains, hidden beneath dust and time. Occasionally, wind slips through its halls, and the 7 voices rise again, only for a breath. Not in song, not in warning, only to ask the question once more, not to him, but to us. Chapter 10, The Voice That Found. Hymn in the dark, the hymn of the unseen hand, chains made of thought. The night he remembered there was a time when Revan disappeared from the stars. No paths tracked his movements, no temple recorded his breath. He became a whisper that even the Force could not follow, not light, not shadow, just silence, moving through space. It is said he drifted through forgotten regions, far beyond. The rim where the stars were sick with memory and gravity bent like sorrow. And there, in that hollow dark, a voice found him, not a voice of flesh, not of machine, not even of the Force as the Jedi had taught it. It was older, quieter, like a thought that had waited centuries to be heard. It began with a hum, a low, wordless hymn that seemed to echo inside the bones rather than the ears. Revan awoke inside an obsidian structure shaped like a hand. 5 long chambers reaching toward a dead sun. There were no windows, only patterns etched into the walls, glowing faintly like veins. The place had no name, but some would later call it the hand that waits. He moved through its passages slowly, as though stepping through dreams. In each chamber, a different memory called to him, not his own, but memories of beings long extinguished. Their thoughts lived here still, trapped in loops, like water flowing through broken stone. In the central chamber, he found no throne, no master, only a floating arc of crystal chains, each one pulsing with voices, trapped echoes, bound ideas. They were not screaming, they were singing, not in joy, not in grief, but in purpose. They sang of unity, they sang of order, and they sang of control. Revan stood before them, silent. The chains pulsed with growing rhythm, and then, all at once, the voice emerged. The one behind the many. It did not ask his name. It did not offer power. It simply said, "You are not broken. You are divided. I can teach you how to be one." It was not spoken aloud, but imprinted into his thoughts. It was not cruel. It was not kind. It simply was. And with every moment, Revan felt his memories drawn forward, not stolen, not erased, but laid bare. The pain, the peace, the victories, the betrayals. It held all of them in its voice. It called itself the unseen hand, not a being, but a thought, that moves through minds. It had touched others. Some it shattered, some it shaped. It did not serve the Force. It did not defy it. It observed, and it offered. Revan did not kneel, but neither did he flee. He listened, and in that stillness, a choice stirred within him. Not the choice of war or peace, not of light or dark, but of memory he could forget. He could surrender the weight, let the voice sing over the cracks, become one, or he could remember every scar, every doubt, every contradiction, and remain many. That night, the stars outside shifted, slowly, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. Revan closed his eyes. The voice quieted. The chains dimmed. He turned, walking back through the 5 chambers, slower than before. And though the hand was silent, it had not let go. Some say he left a part of himself there. Others say something followed him, not a being, not a thought, but a rhythm, a shadow made of song. Whatever the truth, Revan emerged, changed once more, not whole, not healed, but aware. The galaxy would see him again, but they would never again understand who or what he had become. And far in the void, the hand still waits. Its hymn hums low, patient, eternal. Chapter 11, where shadows lit the sky, the beacon of the hollow world, the sky that refused to end, the pact there is a world that does not spin. It floats in silence beyond all charts, caught between 2 dead stars, wrapped in a blanket of shadow so deep it dims even the Force. This place has no name on any map, but the Sith once called it the Hollow World, for within its broken crust rests a beacon older than the oldest temple and brighter than any sun. Long ago, the Jedi sent seekers to find it. None returned. The Sith sent conquerors. They returned only in silence, speaking no words, their eyes turned to things unseen. And Revan too was drawn there, not by rumor nor command, but by a signal that pulsed through the Force like a heartbeat beneath stone. He arrived alone, in a ship grown quiet from long wandering. The planet beneath him shimmered like coal, dust and ice, its surface cracked and motionless, its sky eternally night. But deep within, something burned. He descended through miles of collapsed tunnels and fossil light, down toward the heat that should not have existed. And there, at the center of the hollow world, he found it, the beacon. It was not made by hands. It was not carved or forged. It grew, a spire of crystal and flame, rising from the molten heart like the bone of a god. Light spiraled from it, slow and pulsing, in colors unseen by common sight. The air was heavy with silence, and with something else. Memory. As Revan stepped closer, the sky above the cavern shimmered, not with stars, but with visions. Not illusions, not dreams, but echoes. In that sky, battles raged that had never been recorded. Jedi and Sith walked side by side. Empires that never rose, fell. Children who never lived spoke names that had not yet been chosen. The beacon did not speak, but it showed. It revealed the galaxy, not as it was, or had been, but as it might be, had other choices been made. 1,000 paths, 1,000 shadows of light. Revan stood at the edge of it, his breath slow, his mind still. He did not reach for the visions. He let them pass like mist. And then the beacon shifted. A ring of light circled him, not binding, not threatening, but offering. A pact, not of power, but of vision. It would show him futures. In return, he must carry them, not change them, not choose among them, but remember them. The Starfire Pact was not sealed with words. It was sealed with a breath, his breath drawn deep into the light. In that moment, the beacon dimmed, its fire quieted, and the hollow world grew still once more. But the visions did not vanish. They lived inside him now. He walked back to the surface beneath a sky that refused to end. A sky filled with stars that no longer belonged only to the present. Stars that remembered every future he had seen, and above it all, far in the dark, the beacon still waits, pulsing in silence, watching for those who can carry its light without being burned. Chapter 12. The Garden that bled through time, the root. Beneath Revan's mind, the flower that dreamed of war, the watchers in the veil there, is a garden the Jedi no longer speak of, hidden in the folds between systems. Behind veils of folded starlight, in a realm where time does not pass. In straight lines, its name has been lost, but in the dreams of ancient seers, it was once called the Blooming Wound. It is not a garden of peace. It is not a place of rest. It is where the Force once tried to heal itself. Revan found it not by map, but by ache, a feeling in the marrow of his bones, a tug in his sleep that whispered of roots and ruin. For weeks he traveled through storms, of static and stretches of space where gravity hummed wrong. At last he found it, a planet smaller than a moon, wrapped in golden mist, orbiting nothing. The surface shimmered with dew that was not wet. Trees stretched upward with no sun to follow, and from the cracked soil great blossoms rose, flowers the size of starships, their petals pulsing faintly with crimson light. Each flower dreamed, and Revan could feel them, not as plants, but as memories made flesh. Every blossom was a wound in the Force, opened by war, pain, or betrayal. Some bloomed from ancient Jedi purges, some grew from Sith massacres, and some had not yet happened. The flower that pulsed most violently bore his own name in its roots. He knelt before it, heart still, breath shallow. The petals opened like a mouth, remembering how to speak, and the air around him thickened with visions. He saw children trained to kill in the name of peace. He saw lovers turning blades on each other in the name of prophecy. He saw 1,000 wars. Some he had started, some he had only watched dot, and beneath it all, the same root ran through each vision, a tendril of will, sharp and black, winding through time like a question never answered. Then the watchers came. They did not speak, they did not move. Hooded shapes, wrapped in robes of translucent cloth, drifting among the trees like forgotten thoughts. They had no faces, only veils that shimmered when he looked too long. But he knew them, he had seen them. Before, in half-remembered dreams and the edges of battlefields. They were not Jedi, they were not Sith. They were the ones who watched, who tended the garden. One of them raised a hand. A single petal fell from the flower that bore his name. It landed in Revan's palm, burning softly with violet fire. Number, words were spoken. He understood. To carry this garden within him was to remember every wound the Force had ever bled, and still to love it, to want to heal it, not through dominance or denial, but through presence, through knowing. As the petal faded into his skin, he felt the garden change. Some blossoms closed, some roots curled, and somewhere far off, another flower bloomed. Perhaps it bore a name not yet spoken. Perhaps it dreamed of war not yet fought. But the watchers did not follow him as he left. They turned back to their silence, to their slow tending, and the golden mist swallowed the path once more. The Jedi would say the garden does not exist. The Sith would seek to burn it. But the Force remembers, and Revan remembers. There is a place where pain becomes bloom, where the past is soil and memory is seed. And though the galaxy may forget, the garden still grows. Chapter 13. The Crystal that refused to sing, the scar in the Force, the pilgrimage of the pale fire. The cave where no one slept there is a crystal buried beneath 1,000 years of silence. No map marks its resting place. No Jedi archive remembers its shape. It lies within a cave, sealed by thought alone, a wound in the rock where even time forgets to breathe. They called it the cave where no one slept, for it was said that those who entered left forever restless, as if their dreams had been scattered into stardust. Only those drawn by a calling older than words ever dared seek it, and even they were few. Revan came alone, his mind hushed, his presence in the Force thinned like candlelight in wind. He had walked for days across a world of salt and ash, where nothing grew and even the sky refused to change. The cave waited at the heart of this emptiness, a dark mouth in the stone, humming without sound. Inside, the air was thick and cold. Walls shimmered with faint echoes of lives, long past Jedi initiates who had once come seeking their Kyber. Crystals, children led by whispers of the Force, but the voices here had stilled. The cave had turned quiet, too quiet, and at its center, Revan found the crystal. It hovered above the stone, untouched by light or shadow. Unlike any Kyber he had ever seen, it gave off no color, no sound. It was clear and perfect. But it refused to sing, not to him, not to the Force. Revan sat before it in silence. Hours passed, then days. He meditated, not to command, but to listen. He let the Force move through him like water through hollow bone. He offered no questions, no demands. Still, the crystal did not speak. Then came the pale fire. A light that was not light, soft, white, and empty, like the glow of something that had forgotten its purpose. It burned just beyond the edges of the cave, never touching, never warming. And with it came the memories. Visions flowed like cold. Rivers through Revan's mind, Jedi cast out for feeling too deeply, Sith broken by the emptiness of their own rage, children abandoned by both orders, lost in the space between. He saw a girl, no older than 12, holding a lightsaber made of bone, a boy who built his weapon from the shard of a mirror, a warrior who fought with no blade at all, only the memory of light. They had all come here, and none had been chosen, because this crystal, this scar in the Force, was not meant to be wielded. It was not a gift, but a remembrance, a symbol of all that had been broken in the endless war between light and dark. Revan reached out, not to take it, but to touch its silence. The moment his fingers brushed the crystal, it shattered, not into pieces, but into visions. A spiral of glass and memory, scattering through the chamber like the fragments of a forgotten star. And in each shard, he saw another path, another self, one who never left the Jedi, one who never removed the mask, one who chose peace and faded into legend. The Force had not given him this crystal to wield. It had shown him what could not be. It had whispered of balance, not as a weapon, but as truth. When the cave quieted once more, nothing remained but dust where the crystal had floated. And still, the silence pulsed, not empty, but full, as if a song too deep to hear had been sung and finished. Revan left the cave unchanged in form, but not in soul. He no longer sought only victory, no longer searched only for control. He had seen the scar, and he carried its silence now like a vow. Some crystals sing, some crystals shine, and some remind. The Force remembers, the Force remembers them all. Chapter 14. The door that only he could see, the mirror of the waking flame, the dream that hunted him, the promise of the nameless ones. There are places in the galaxy that are hidden not by distance, nor by darkness, but by the quiet turning of the mind. This place was not found on any star chart. It was not protected by guards or gates, nor by time or storm. And yet, no one who did not carry the scar of memory could ever reach it. It was called, only in whispers, the door that only he could see. No one knew when it was built, or if it had always been there. It stood beneath a cliff of sleeping glass, where the stars did not move, and the wind made no sound. The air was heavy with stillness, and the dust on the ground bore no tracks, not from foot or paw or wing. Revan came here in silence, guided not by a map, but by the weight of a dream that would not leave him, a dream that did not fade with waking, a dream of flame without fire, and a door that watched him. Each time he closed his eyes, it was there. He had wandered through temples and tombs, fought wars and broken oaths, but nothing followed him like this dream. In the dream, he stood before a tall, narrow frame, carved not of wood or stone, but of memory. There was no handle, no lock, only the faint impression of something waiting, something watching. He called it the mirror of the waking flame, not because it burned, but because it revealed on the day he found it. Revan did not knock, he did not push, he simply breathed, and the door opened. Inside, the air turned red, not with blood, but with thought. A warm, living red, like the glow behind closed eyelids. Shapes swirled around him, not people, not ghosts, but echoes, faces he had worn, names he had shed. He saw himself as Jedi, as Sith, as something in between. He saw the child he once was, standing at the edge of the stars. He saw the general who broke galaxies. He saw the man who forgot his name. And then, beyond all of them, he saw the nameless ones, figures in the distance, cloaked in silence, without face or voice. They did not speak. They only waited. But he understood them. They were not enemies, not guides, not gods. They were the truth beneath the Force, the ones who had never taken sides, the ones who had never chosen war, and though they had no names, they each held a promise. One stepped forward and placed a mark upon his palm, a mark of heat that left no scar, but throbbed with quiet rhythm. Not pain, but presence. It was the rhythm of the Force when it does not speak, a vow made without words, a gift given without ownership. Revan bowed his head, not in surrender, but in reverence. He was not the first to find them. He would not be the last. But in this moment, he was chosen to remember. When he stepped back through the door, it closed behind him without sound. The red glow faded. The wind did not stir. And when he turned to look again, there was nothing, no door, no flame, only rock and silence. But the mark remained, and in the nights that followed, the dream changed. No longer did the door hunt him. No longer did the flame watch. Now he was the watcher. Now he was the one who held the promise. And deep within the Force, something ancient stirred, not with fear, not with hope, but with memory, for the nameless ones do not forget, and the door that only he could see may open again. Chapter 15. The sword that remembered the rain, the weight of forgotten storms, the duel that never ended, the circle of quiet ashes before the age of blasters. Before the scream of starfighters filled the sky, there was a blade, and the blade remembered. It lay beneath a sky that no longer wept, in a field where the storm once lingered but would not return. The ground was dark, almost glass-like, hardened by heat and loss. Yet in the cracks, soft moss had begun to grow, timid, pale, stubborn. The wind here did not howl. It sighed. They called it the sword that remembered the rain. Long ago it was forged not for conquest, but for sorrow, a weapon shaped not in fire, but in grief. Its edge gleamed silver in the sun, but at night it darkened, as if drinking the stars. It once belonged to two warriors, not enemies, not friends, something deeper. One wore white robes, frayed by time, bound by a code too heavy to hold. The other, cloaked in grey, moved like smoke, free and lost. They met on the hill that touched the clouds, the last place the rain had fallen, and though no storm stirred above them, they each carried a tempest within. The duel was not one of anger, it was a conversation of blades, a dance of memory. They moved not to win, but to understand. Their strikes echoed across the field like slow thunder. Their feet left no tracks. The sword did not choose between them. It sang for both, and when it was over, when breath was short and eyes were wide with something like regret, they did not fall. They simply stopped, for they had seen in each other not opposition, but reflection. Two paths split from one root, two echoes of the same wound. They laid the sword between them. Neither could carry it further, neither could claim its truth. And the sky, at last, wept one final time. Rain fell soft and slow, not in violence, but in remembrance. The storm cleansed nothing. It only bore witness, and so the blade remained, buried not in earth, but in silence. Years passed, centuries turned. The warriors were forgotten, their names lost to dust. But the sword endured, not rusted, not ruined, preserved by something older than time, the will of the Force when it chooses to remember. Those who came after tried to lift it. Many could not. Some did, but all felt its weight, not the weight of metal, the weight of the storm. Visions would come of rain, of voices, of a duel without victory. They would hear the breath of warriors long dead. They would see a sky that cried not for war, but for peace denied. And always, before the vision faded, they would hear the same whisper, "This duel is not over, for the storm never truly ends. It only waits, waits for hearts split in two, waits for voices that carry both light and shadow, waits for those who do not seek to win, but to understand." The field remains quiet. The moss grows slowly. The wind forgets nothing, and the sword lies still, remembering the rain. Chapter 16. The tower where the force stood still, the star that died twice, the chamber of one step. The place where memory drowned there is a place where even the force holds its breath. Far beyond the charted worlds, past nebulae that shimmer like sleeping gods, there rises a tower. It is not carved from stone, nor forged in metal, but born of something older, grown from crystal and echo, shaped by silence. The tower has no name, no one built it. It simply was. It rises from a dead moon, cracked and pale, where light bends wrong and time forgets its rhythm. Gravity loosens, sound becomes thin, and thought begins to tremble. Here the force is not gone, but it is still, as if watching, as if listening. They say the Jedi once found it, a seeker whose name was lost. To wind, she climbed a spiral that led nowhere, not to find answers, but to lose her questions. She stepped through the first door and felt nothing. Not calm, not pain, not clarity, just stillness, the kind that echoes inside the bones. The first chamber held a star, or the memory of one. It pulsed like a fading heart, caught between birth and collapse. The second chamber held only a stone basin, full of clear water that did not ripple. When she looked into it, she did not see herself. She saw her master's hands, her apprentices, fear, her future curled up like smoke in a broken helmet. But the third chamber, the third was empty. It was called the chamber of one step. A smooth floor, no walls, no ceiling, just a place to stand and a step to take. And when she moved one step forward, she felt it. The weight of every life she'd touched, the pain she had buried, the light she had lost, the shadows she had denied. The tower showed her nothing, yet she saw everything, because this was the place where memory drowned, where all that was unspoken finally rose. The force here was not light, it was not dark, it was still like the surface of a frozen lake, like the pause between inhale and exhale. It did not guide, it did not judge, it only waited. The seeker did not leave, not because she could, but because she understood. The tower was not meant to be escaped. It was meant to be heard, so she became still. Her robes faded to dust, her saber fell quiet, her name vanished, but some say she remains, not as a ghost, but as a silence, a breath between chambers, a pause in the force, and those who find the tower, if the force allows it, will hear her, not in words, but in feeling, a hush, a question, a presence that does not touch, but notices. And if they take that one step, they too will see the star that died twice, once in the sky, and once in their heart, and they will know. The force does not speak in sound, it speaks in stillness. Chapter 17. The sky that burned without sound, the flight of the red wind, the silence before the storm song, the dream Revan never told, There are skies that remember fire, and there are skies that do not. Long ago, on a world erased from maps and minds alike, there stretched a sky so vast, so endless, it seemed to cradle the stars themselves. It was a world of pale deserts and black rivers, of temples made from ash and bone, and winds that moved in spirals too perfect to be chance. The locals once called it Threnos, though that name is only ever whispered in dreams. And above Threnos there came a day when the sky burned, and not a sound was heard. No thunder, no scream, no roar of engines or cry of battle. Only silence, thick, golden, unbearable. They said the red wind was to blame. The red wind was not air. It was not flame. It was an event, or perhaps a being, or perhaps a wound in time. It came down from the stars, trailing red light like a comet carved from rage. It fell without falling, moved without motion. Where it passed, the air shimmered with memory. Trees wept dust. Children dreamed of other lives, lives they had not lived, wars they had not fought, names they could not speak. And somewhere deep beneath that burning sky, Revan stood alone, not as a warrior, not as a savior, but as a man who had seen too much. He had come seeking a shrine, one that did not appear to exist. A shrine said to hold a song never sung, a song that could end a war before it began. It was known as the Storm Song, but before the song there was only silence, the kind of silence that hangs over a battlefield not yet stained. The silence of breath held before a final truth. He stood atop a dune of glass, shaped by lightning that had never struck. The red wind circled above. The Force was quiet, waiting, and in that silence, Revan dreamed. But this was not like other dreams. This dream was made of pieces, a shattered mirror of what might have been. He saw a face with no name, a mask lying half buried in the snow, a promise he had made, and broken, and made again. He saw a temple, singing without voice, a child who would never know his name, a blade made of two choices, and a war that had not yet begun, but already mourned its dead. These were the dreams Revan never told, not because he feared them, but because they were not his alone. They belonged to the Force, to the lives yet to come, to the ones who would walk after him, carrying shards of what he once was. The sky did not stop burning, but neither did it consume. It simply became red, a red that bled into the stone, into the wind, into the memory of that place. And when Revan finally moved one step, no more, the red wind faded, not gone, not banished, only resting, waiting. For the next dreamer now, the world of Threnos is gone, or hidden, or dreaming still. No maps mark it, no ships land upon it. But in the quiet corners of meditation, in that moment between waking and sleep, some still find themselves there. They feel the heat of a burning sky. They hear no sound, and they remember a man who once stood in silence, facing the wind not to fight it, but to listen, because sometimes the Force does not warn. It does not command. It simply offers a dream and waits to see who dares to carry it. Chapter 18. The mask that floated in the river of time, the final vision of the lost crusader, the path that led nowhere, the last breath of his Nemin, the places where time forgets to move. There is a river. It does not flow forward or back, nor does it run with water. It moves with memory, thin and silver, slow and endless, cradling the lost names of history like leaves in its gentle current. The ancients never spoke of it aloud. They only whispered when the night was too still and the Force too quiet. They called it the River of Time, though no one could say whether it lay beneath the stars or within them. And in that river, they say, a mask floats. Not rusted, not broken, just waiting. It is not anchored by anything, not by sorrow, not by war, not even by the one who once wore it, for the man is gone. Only the mask remains. Revan. The name carries weight, like mist heavy with rain. It echoes, in ruins and holocrons, in prayers spoken over battlefields, in the minds of those who still wonder whether he was hero or villain or both. But here, in this place beyond time, none of that matters. There is only the mask, and the dream it still holds. Some say the final vision came after all wars had ended, not with peace, but with silence, the kind that settles on a galaxy too tired to mourn. A hush stretched over planets that no longer shone. Temples crumbled. Inward, blades were buried, and Revan simply walked away, not to rest, not to vanish, but to follow a path that led nowhere. It wound through voids where stars had died long ago, through memories no longer attached to bodies, through choices, made and remade across lifetimes. And at the end of it, or perhaps at the beginning, he arrived at the river. The river of time does not reflect faces, only echoes, and when Revan stood at its edge, he did not see himself. He saw the moments between his footsteps, the space between choices, the silence that followed every word he never spoke, and then, as softly as breath, he removed the mask, not in shame, not in pain, but as a gift, for no one, for everyone. He placed it upon the river's surface, and watched it float, not sinking, not drifting, just remaining. The mask was never meant to be a symbol. It was not crafted for fear or legend. It was a question, one the galaxy still cannot answer. What do you become when you remove the name the Force gave you? Revan walked into the river. His body vanished, but not as death, as memory, fading not into nothing, but into everything. And so the mask remains. To this day, no hand has ever touched it. No wave has moved it. No being has dared to lift it from the current. For, in its quiet, weightless shape, is the final breath of a name that was never meant to last. And yet, it still does, not as a war cry, not as a prophecy, but as a whisper in the dreams of those who seek truth more than power. Some say the Force itself listens to the mask. Others say the river listens to no one, only carries what the galaxy cannot hold, and maybe, when the time is right, the river will part and the mask will rise, not to begin a new crusade, but to remind us that the greatest journey is the one that leads inward, not toward destiny, but toward silence. And so, beneath stars that no longer burn, on a river that forgets, nothing, a single shape drifts across eternity, the mask that floated in the river of time, the final vision of the lost crusader, the last breath of his name.